Hello and welcome to the Vine Life Podcast. I'm Tony Clark, your host, and today I've got a special guest. And he is a radio host, author, television show producer, writer, concert promoter, multi-instrumental musician, performer, magician, and a founding member of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And I want you to welcome the legendary John McEuen. John has made over 46 albums that have earned 4 platinum and 5 gold records, multiple Grammy Awards and nominations, CMA and ACM Awards, an Emmy Film Score nomination, IBMA Record of the Year Award, and performed on another 25 albums as a guest artist. John's production of Steve Martin the Crow won the 2010 Best Bluegrass Album Grammy. John was also inducted into the 2017 American Banjo Museum Hall of Fame. And more information about John can be found at johnmcEuen.net. Once again, johnmcEuen.net. So, John, it's an honor for me. Thank you so much for coming on the program today.
Well, thank you. Thanks, like I said to my mom, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I've got before we talk about your new album, which will go down track by track and talk about those songs, I've got to ask you, what's a nice boy that his preliminary years were Oakland and Southern California? How does he become one of the premier banjo players in our lifetime? How does that happen?
I don't think of myself as that, but thank you. How does it happen? Well, when you're following a guy named Doug Dillard the first few years, who played impeccably, a little play on words there, but I had good influences, and I worked my buns off picking. I started playing in college. I'm going to school, but I'm playing 8-9 hours a day, and that kind of explained why I got my first D in college, because banjo had taken over my life. It was in calculus, so it was not easy to do calculus, I found out. And I don't know, I'm glad that people think that. That's nice.
Yeah, and the reason why I mentioned how does a boy from Southern California, basically, that's not typically the area that you think of someone being a premier banjo player like yourself. I tend to think of maybe Kentucky, Tennessee, that part of the country. So it's amazing that how far you have progressed. It's just something that, that area of the country you typically don't think of as having its roots in bluegrass.
Well, I started because of the Dillards, and they were playing Southern California all over the place in 1964 and 5. And 1963 also they started. And that was me, the heart of bluegrass. And also Clarence White and Roland had a group called the Country Boys, later the Kentucky Colonels, and they were excellent. And they were just a big influence on me. My mom said, "You ought to change your name to Dillard." And I said, "No, Mom, but actually, okay, I'll do it." But I never got that done. But it led to doing things over the years with the Dirt Band, like that album you see back there, Will the Circle Be Unbroken? And trying to figure out where it is. There it is. I'm pointing at it. And that was such a wonderful project. Here I was, 25 years old. I've been playing for 6 or 7 years. And I'm in the studio with Earl Scruggs just because I asked him if he'd record with me. I asked him, taking him back to a club in Colorado, Tulagi Club. "Earl, would you maybe record with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band?" And he said, "I'd be proud to." Wow. The next day I asked Doc Watson. He said, "Sure." The next Monday, my brother got Merle Travis. And then Earl and Louise, his wife, got other people involved. I wanted Jimmy Martin. Louise got Jimmy. I got Jimmy to tell. He promised he's going to act good too. Because Jimmy Martin was quite a cut up sometimes. But anyway, 3 weeks after I asked Earl that question, Bill, my brother, and I told the band, we're going to go to Nashville and record in August. And they were excited about it.
That album, Will the Circle Be Unbroken? I'm always curious that they say never meet your heroes. What was that experience like, meeting your heroes and working with them?
They say what?
I've heard the phrase never meet your heroes in person because it's always a disappointment. And typically, but what was that like as a young man, a young musician, to actually meet some of the heroes of bluegrass and country music?
As that went on, after the Circle album, I was able to meet anybody in country music. I kind of got a permanent backstage pass at the Grand Ole Opry. And I've never heard that phrase before, but I think I know what it means. You don't want to be disappointed by somebody you've only listening to their best, their edited best, their performance that was great. But you find out that they're human and that they make mistakes too. Like Earl Scruggs, Vassar Clements. I mean, Vassar, it was hard to play him into a corner, but sometimes if you're just picking, it would happen. And maybe somebody wouldn't want to see that if they were a Clements fan. But maybe they should, so they could see that, well, I have trouble too. He has trouble too, Earl couldn't just play anything right off the bat. He'd have to go through it sometimes. And it was good to find that out. But I was always impressed with the people. I felt like Forrest Gump with a banjo. I ended up in places where, what am I doing here? I'm in the Leningrad embassy. Nitty Gritty was the first band to go to Russia in 1977. That put us in a lot of strange situations. And some of the people I met weren't heroes. Sammy Hagar. Well, he was a hero to those 40,000 people in that field, and the Dirt Band was opening for him. But I'd taken my son on the road, and here we are backstage at a baseball stadium, and I say to Aaron, now you boys stay back here. You stay back here. Do not go out there. Yeah, it's a Sammy Hagar audience. You don't want 8 or 10-year-olds mixed, anyway. They stayed back there catching butterflies backstage. And Hagar and I went looking for them because they weren't where we thought they'd be. And have you gone on yet? Yeah, it was a fun show. Too bad you didn't see it. But it's fine. Did you catch a butterfly? Oh, okay. That was funny. But Leon Russell was a good one to meet. He was a lifelong friend. And I knew him when he was in the Wrecking Crew. He wanted to record the Dirt Band, but we already had a record deal. My mom became a big fan of his too over the years. That was 1966 that he first heard the group rehearsing at the Ash Grove, which is now the Improv. And we had a job, and we'd actually rehearse there because we could get food for free. And we helped put Ed Pearl out of business. Eating. I can still taste the ham and cheese sandwich. Anyway, and yes.
No, I would just. I'm sorry for interrupting you. You've played with so many other famous musicians and singer-songwriters over the years. Is there anyone that you look back and you're thinking, I wish I would have had an opportunity to play with this guy or this gal?
Yeah, Paul McCartney, who I've met a couple times, but not recorded with, and John Fogerty, who I've met one really good time, talked to for 25 minutes, and I always wanted to play to either one of those. And of course, I would like to record something. Well, I've done Crystal Gale, not her. I'd like to record some other people, production-wise, but producing is a tough pursuit. You have to block out a month or two, and you're responsible for how the record sounds, and it's like a lot of responsibility to do it right. And anyway, so that's who I've wanted to play with.
Well, again, an amazing career, and you've got, it looks like a long career ahead of you. And let's talk about the current album that you've got out now. That's kind of a departure from what you're used to doing. It's a spoken word album, and the new album's title is The Newsman, A Man of Record. Now, John, on this record, you add music to stories with each composition, and these compositions contain poetry spanning over the last 200 years. And I was talking just briefly to you before the interview, and I was saying, when I listened to this album yesterday and this morning, I picture myself driving down an old country road in the middle of nowhere, maybe in East Tennessee or Kentucky, someplace like that, about 50 to 100 years ago. What was the inspiration for this album?
I had done talking songs when I started playing. I didn't know how to sing. I couldn't learn for some reason. And, every time I come to town, the boys keep kicking my dog around. Makes no difference if he is a hound, they gotta quit kicking my dog around. Me and Lem Briggs and old Bill Brown, we took a load of corn into town. My old dog Jim, he's an ornery old cuss. He just naturally followed us. And people would like the story. And I would do that. I'd learn one a year or something. And over the last many years, I got to record that so I don't forget. I got to record that because, I got to. And over a 12-year period, I got an album's worth of material. And then Tom Hanks puts out The Newsman. News of the World. Did you see that movie?
I did.
You did? Yeah, and that really kicked me in the rear. It made me start finishing this, and then I had to find a record deal, and you can't just make a record deal and put it out because I signed with Compass in September last year, and I'm not going to put out an album for October, November, December, and there's too much. There's too many people are putting out stuff. There's only so much press, only so much interest. And the first quarter seemed early. So second quarter, that's a good time. So now this album, I had the jacket done for 4 months. And some of the cuts were 10, 12 years. What was your question?
I was just talking, what's the inspiration for this album?
Telling the stories. I love to tell stories and collecting them, and people knew that. Thomas Monroe knew that. He sent me the story his brother had written about Vietnam. And I didn't do that. I didn't finish that until 2 years ago, and because he sent it 12 years ago, and I read it, and it's like, oh man, this is important, but I don't have the voice for it, and it's too depressing, and but then I realized it was good to tell. So I told it. We were just boys once on the flight to the fight. Expected to act like men. We got off the chopper and they told us, keep your head low, but you don't have to win. And, they hand this kid a gun and all that stuff. And it's just really a tough story. I can't give away much else of it.
Yeah, and that's one of the tracks on this album. And I'm not sure I can pronounce it correctly, but is it Nui Biden? Is that how the pronunciation?
Nui Biden.
John, if you don't mind, let's go through track by track from this new album of yours. And the beginning track, I guess, is The Newsman. Tell me a little bit about this song.
Well, I wrote this piece because I wanted to capture the guy that influenced me for so many years. I'm out on the road managing the Dirt Band as well as playing, It was a lot of work. It was up an hour and a half in the morning earlier than the other guys and staying up an hour after and then getting up and driving to the next gig and driving to the next gig. And then the next gig I'm driving to, over and over and over, or getting everybody to the airport and here's your seat. Yeah. And I'd sometimes think that was hard. It was difficult. Maybe it was monotonous. Maybe it was okay. And anytime I thought it was hard, I'd think of Steve, whose life was hard, a crippled guy, driving around on a motor scooter, going up La Cienega Boulevard to Sunset, and selling newspapers that were covering his motorcycle, his bike, his motorbike, and scooter. And he just had a bunch of... And I saw him first time. I was going to the airport to catch a plane, kind of complaining about to myself, "Hey, where's that guy going? Wow, what's he doing? He's going up." And then the 4 days later, I'm sitting in Ben Frank's restaurant having breakfast in Hollywood. It was a weekend job, and here he comes. "Would you let me buy a paper?" Because he had a... I'm not trying to be disrespectful or make fun of him. It's just that he couldn't talk very well. He had cerebral palsy, and he stumbled when he walked. And he sold newspapers to everyone. Everyone would get something. Then he'd get to the major agencies, get right to the president. "Yeah, Steve, come on in. Marty's back in the office. Go take him his paper." Okay, he'd stumble along, and one guy, I always gave him a couple bucks. This guy, Steve, the newsman, might have made a fortune selling his newspapers. But he took care of himself. It was a great thing, a great lesson. He was doing it.
Did you ever get a chance to talk to this gentleman?
No, one time, but I was too young. I'm not going to talk to him. I'll have a paper, please. I was too young. I thought it was too hard, and I wish I could have. I wish I could have. Dang it. But no, I didn't, and I don't know where he is, but he's here. Do you like that story?
I love that story.
Oh,
absolutely love it.
It's kind of like a Dark Alice's Restaurant or something, maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's the first cut.
Well, it's an amazing cut. Let's go to the second cut. The second cut is titled Fly Trouble. Tell me a little bit about this song.
Well, I figured after you listen to the Newsman, it might be nice to have something to laugh about. And Fly Trouble was recorded by Hank Williams Sr. in 1948. And my brother suggested I do it. You ought to do Fly Trouble. And I learned it, and kids love it. because they're singing about a fly, buzz, 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 goes that bit, and it's incredibly fun to do. And after listening to it a couple times, when you get all the lines, it's even more fun. Did you ever see a jazz act live? Jazz act is what he used for jackass, because you couldn't say ass on the radio then.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway. And so Fly Trouble, I like it because I played my best acoustic guitar solo I've ever put on a record. And lap steel, my 1948 six-string lap steel. The simple little licks. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just filling in.
Well, in Fly Trouble, it seems like that would make an amazing children's book.
Oh. Yeah, it would. Somebody out there might do that. I might do that now. You'd have to license it from the publisher. Yeah. Anyway.
I was just, listening to that song, I was just picturing those images that you're talking about. I was picturing the fly, I was picturing all of this, and I was thinking, hey, this is like a children's book that I read, or when I was a child. So I think it would fit nicely into that, into a book somehow. But yeah. So John, the next track is The Cremation of Sam McGee. Tell me a little bit about this song.
Do you remember hearing this or reading it?
I do not.
You don't?
I don't remember. No.
Oh, well, good.
But the question that I had is the next track that's called The Cremation of Sam McGee. Fill me in about this story.
Oh, that was a fun story. When I was in grade school, 5th and 6th grade, I'd get my sister to read that for me. She was 3 years older, and I probably got her to do that a dozen times, but it was really fun. And I had to record it. I recorded it, and I put the music to it, and I changed the music, and then, oh yeah, this will work. And it was just really fun to build. I spent 4 years on this, on Cremation of Sam McGee. I didn't put the sound effects in until the last year. The rain and the snow and the dog barking and thing, the fire. And that's really fun to do that. It's like working on a movie. And it's about an old miner and his partner who isn't quite as old. And they're up in Alaska. And the miner says, well, it's the cursed cold that's got right hold of me and fills. The miner is complaining about the cold and chills me clean through to the bone. And it's like he asked Sam McGee is the miner, and he asked the guy, you won't refuse my last request. I want you to cremate me when I'm gone. And it all leads up to the cremation of it all leads up to the cremation, which is, I'm not going to give it away because it's a funny ending. Yeah. It's a funny poem.
Yeah.
And it deals with death, but it does hopefully comically. Written in 1907 by Robert Service.
Well, it certainly does that. And I encourage anyone listening or watching this interview, please order this album. It's definitely blessed me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's going to be on my playlist, especially on long drives from this moment forward. So, the next track is Old Rivers. Tell us a little bit about this song.
Oh, it's a very special place for me because I heard that first in 1963 when Walter Brennan did it. I didn't play music then, but it captivated me. One of these days I'm going to climb that mountain, walk up there among the clouds where there ain't no fields to plow. Yeah, there ain't no fields to plow. It's about an old guy that spends his whole life plowing the ground, following a mule, midnight oil. And it's about the kid that follows him around, busting up dirt clods with my own two bare feet. Old Rivers was a friend of mine. I thought that sounded so good. When that guy says Old Rivers was a friend of mine, it really captures it, I think. And anyway, I got this was the last piece to make it. Last November, I kind of last November, I went, I'm going to do Old Rivers. Okay, get your stuff. And I got the studio stuff, turned it on, tuned the guitars, and laid it down. In 3 hours, I was done. It was really, I've been thinking about it. In 50 years and 3 hours, I was done, you know. But it's really fun to do things like that.
Well, you certainly bring new life, John, to this old country music song. It's definitely it's made new again, if you will, just in my eyes.
Oh, good. Have you heard the original?
I have heard the original. It's been a long time, but I recognized the song when you started playing it. So on the album,
2/3 of the people have never heard it. The same with Cremation and Sam McGee, and 1/3 of the people remember it. And what's funny is playing the piano on Old Rivers. The original one was Leon Russell, when he was one of the sidemen, one of the wrecking crew in L.A. And I was reading his book last week, and when it came to Old Rivers, I played the country. It was just amazing. Leon did so many things.
Well, again, it's an amazing song. And John, let's transition to the next track. It's the guitar of Pineapple John. This is I was just picturing this old guitar getting beaten up over the years. Tell me a little bit, what about this song?
Well, I'd been doing some recording out at the Cash Cabin studio. That's Johnny Cash's studio. It's run by it's not his only, his son, John Carter Cash, owns it now, and he does projects in there. He won a Grammy for being the producer of the Folsom Prison Blues with Tony Emanuel in the band. He's won. Anyway, it's a good little studio, and you can't help but being inspired to perform. When you go there to record, there's Maybelle Carter on a stained glass window and Johnny Cash on stage, pictures, and stuff around. And you're surrounded by all his memorabilia. Well, not all of it, some of it. But anyway, John Carter says, I've got some stories here that need music. See, can you think you can find one? And I said, My iPhone just told me Zoom has been updated on this iPhone. Out of nowhere. So John Carter, you can't help but be inspired in this studio. And the poem he gave me was, well, he gave me several, but Pineapple John, the guy playing the guitar and playing pickleball with it was, I thought, humorous. So, and I thought it was a cute story. This is a good non-combative story, It's not like Nui Baden and the others.
Well, it's definitely non-combative, and that kind of takes us to the next song, I guess, that maybe is a little bit combative, and that's Killed at the Ford. Tell me about this, please.
I needed Pineapple John to cool it down a little bit after Newey Baden, and Killed at the Ford brings it back down. It's about a guy that's out. What period do you think this is in? Killed at the Ford.
That I have no idea.
Civil War.
Okay.
So the song, the words were written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow in 1868, and the music I picked was from 1865, a song called "Vacant Chair." Now I recorded all the music and then overdubbed some singers, and I put up "Killed at the Ford," and I went and found. Anyway, then I started editing "Vacant Chair." I had to move things around, like the part where Jennifer sings. I moved over to go where it is, and the part where the guys are singing moved up to front. And anyway, just moved it around to end up with. I think it's a neat piece. I hope people like it.
Well, it's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful poem that's turned into a song. But John, you mentioned a couple of names there, and I always like to ask musicians that are in the forefront on these albums, if you can, talk about some of the folks that helped on this album, and certainly you can't mention them all, but what are some names maybe that stand out to you, that folks that helped that are behind the scenes of this album?
Two of them are dead. David Bourne and Spencer Quinn. Spencer played the banjo on the Newsman, muted banjo. And anyway, and Matt Carsonis is alive, and he's a great singer player in LA. He's done a lot of sessions, used to be in a couple of different groups, and he records audiobooks now. And Jennifer Warnes, I got her to sing on Killed at the Ford song, Vacant Chair. And she did that. That's from my archive, the Vacant Chair song. And she did that in the year 2002 when I originally recorded the track. So that's where the track is from. And then the poem slides in 18 years later to Killed at the Ford. And it was like, oh, yeah, this will work. And that was really neat. Chris Caswell, genius keyboard player, plays the keyboard on Newey Baden. And I play all the other instruments. I play the strings. But he does a great job. David Hoffner played the keyboard on Killed at the Ford. And David Hoffner is a name. David Hoffner is a name that you see on a lot of Jim Ed Norman records and different things out of Nashville. And he's really a very special player. He plays keyboards and banjo. He can get by on a banjo, and which is really neat. So he and I get along well. And there's not that many other people on this record. I played most of them because not many people could wait around that long. But on Fly Trouble, I used a Nashville band of players to get together, and I played guitar and lap steel on that. And the keyboard was, as I said, was David Hoffner and Chris Caswell. Chris Caswell has worked with Paul Williams, the songwriter, for many, many years. And he's also recorded so many people. He's a great keyboardist. He's the kind of guy that just, listen, see if you think this will sound good. I'll put this in here. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, okay, yeah. You know, it's like he's very fast.
Well, an amazing album, amazing tracks, amazing musicians behind the scenes. And track number 7, we've talked about briefly, Newey Baden. If you don't mind, let's go on to track 8 just because of time. The next track is number 8. It's called Red Clay. Tell me about this song.
You're a good guy. Thank you for... for that interest. Thaddeus Bryant had written, well, he writes poetry. He's the youngest contributor. He's 20 years old when he wrote this poem about love in Georgia, in the red clay of Georgia. And I thought it was really nice. So I stuck it in here. He's really happy with it. So I got one sale.
Track number 9, John, is I'll Be Glad When They Run Out of Gas. What about this song?
That's the Country Bumpkins viewpoint on, although everything he has is run by gas, he'll be glad when they run out of gas. Because let me tell you something. Let me tell you those Opeckers a thing or two. You know, I came up with that line, but I couldn't. But Hans Olsen wrote the song, and he's a blues player in Phoenix. He's well known in the Phoenix area and all over Arizona. Plays harmonica guitar and beats the mic with his foot. And anyway, this is a comical song that he wrote.
Well, it's definitely a comical song. You've got to listen to it again. Place the order for the album if you're interested. It's a great album. John, track number 10 is The Mountain Whippoorwill. Tell me about this song.
Well, that came into my life 58 years ago. Well, I was about 17, 18. Steve Martin was doing it, and I played the banjo behind him. I couldn't dictate, couldn't recite the poem and play the banjo, and he couldn't play the banjo and do the poem. But we did it a couple of years, every now and then, and I remember it as being my first standing ovation. We played a concert, and this was like, it wasn't anything like what people might dream. It was a 400 people in a theater thing, a couple of kids. Let's see, we were 20 years old, and I'm playing behind them, and it ends, and the room was silent. Steve looked at me, I looked at him, and then they started clapping and stood up, and they didn't leave, so that was a good sign. But as time went on with his show, he could not do the Mountain Whippoorwill anymore because people would start laughing because he was getting known as a comedian. And he'd go, this is from 1928. People are going, up in the mountains, it's lonesome all the time. Softly, it's like every line was getting a laugh because they were expecting it to be funny. And after it kind of bombed for him a few times, he quit doing it, and I took it over. And that was like 1969 or 70. So I did it in the Dirt Band for 30 years.
Well, an amazing song, an amazing performance. Track number 11 is Jewel's Theme. What's the deal with this song?
Well, I play the piano a little bit, maybe that much, and I sound like okay if I only play 2 songs. This is a song that I wrote for a movie that didn't get made, so I kept the song, and I had booked studio time to work on Steve Martin's album on a track in Nashville. And the studio had a great piano. And I was there for a couple of days, but I told the engineers, come in an hour early tomorrow and have the piano mic'd up ready to be used. I got there the next morning. I sat down and I said, okay, this is the take. And I played it through once, and that was it. So there, I finally had the right sounding piano on the song, and I put it away. By that, I mean I put it in my hard drive. A year later, I took the song out and put a guitar on it. Then, a few months after that, I put the bass on. Then, 2 years later, I ran into Ellen Hinson, who played the oboe. She was a student at Juilliard, New York. Her first recording was playing oboe on this. She did great. Oh, thank you, Ellen. And I put it on this album. It's a kind of cut that you can say your own story to. You can tell people a poem or however, or you just sit there and listen. I've already had the perfect response from it, from people, two different people. Yeah, that makes me think of blah blah blah. And I can't remember what they were thinking of, but anyway, it's good. People seem to like it.
Oh, John, again, this entire album, I love to listen to music that the musician or the singer is telling a story, and it takes me on a journey. And this album certainly does that for me. And if you want to find out more about John, you can simply go to his website at johnmcEuen.net. John, is there anything on your agenda, your upcoming calendar, that you feel free to talk about? What are you working on?
I'm sitting here musing about the album is behind your left side on the wall. It's
Sir.
Make a Little Magic Dirt Band album. That's interesting. That's my brother's idea for the cover.
Really? Can you describe it? And I'm not okay. So it's if you're looking at me on the camera, it's going to be right above my index finger here. Tell me about the design on the cover.
Well, my brother called me one day and he said, "I had a dream last night. The cover is going to be a crystal ball in front with a bunch of roses. Only the roses will be out of focus. And then you turn the album around, and the crystal ball will be out of focus, and the roses will be in focus." And he set it up. He shot the photo and made the cover that way. So it was kind of
any. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Any background information that you want to give about the making of this album that's right behind me?
It was the first album where the name was The Dirt Band, which is something I did not vote for. What? You're going to throw 12 years of marketing out the window? Well, what's the matter? Everybody calls us a dirt band. Yeah, everybody that comes to see us knows. And they are, but only half the people that come see you really are, those are the ones that are coming to see you. The other half are coming with them. It's like, I'll go see the Bob Dylan concert if you take me to see the Barry Manilow final show or whatever. Anyway, so Jeff and Jimmy and the other guy, I was outvoted the Dirt Band because that's what we'd always call it. That's what people would call it. Mm-hmm. Little River Band made the same mistake. They figured they didn't want to be called Little River Band, so they changed it to LRB. Sales went down. The people in the store don't know where to put it. They put the Dirt Band under D. They don't.
Well, I've always thought of you guys as the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. Their Dirt Band isn't something that rings a bell with me.
Wow. What was your question?
Oh, so I was just asking, what's on anything on your agenda that you're currently working on that you feel free to talk about?
Oh yeah. Well, I don't want somebody copying me. I'm not sure who's listening. I recorded "Oh Susanna" with 50 goats, a cow, and 2 dozen kids.
Oh wow!
Years ago, and I'm going to do a children's lyric book of "Oh Susanna," and you can watch the video. You can watch the video now if you want. It's on. You just Google John McEuen, "Oh Susanna," and Sesame Street. Something in that order. I have an album that I want to do with duets with other people, like Emmy Lou and a bunch of people that would play with me. Jimmy Messina, or there's a list of people, but I shouldn't be giving them away. But that's next year. I do a video show when I go out and perform. If they have a video screen, I stand in front of the screen, and what is going on behind me is the early Nitty Gritty Dirt Band leading up to the Circle album, and then some other crazy shots, and then getting to the Circle album. My brother shot photos of the Circle Be Unbroken album. This is the book, by the way, of the Mountain Whippoorwill, and it's the one that's illustrated inside with different pictures.
Love those illustrations.
Yeah, these illustrations. I'm backtracking a little. They're fun. But my brother took 105 photos of the Circle Be Unbroken session, and I wrote a book about that session and what led up to it and how it happened, and we put it out calling it Will the Circle Be Unbroken? The Making of a Landmark Album, which is available and does quite well. It has all the pictures from the sessions are big. You know, they're like,
oh wow.
Instead of the little postage stamp version that is on the
that's a thick book. That's got a lot of information in there with a lot of images.
Yeah, I told the story about each photograph.
Oh wow.
And I had contributors, Marty Stewart, Gary Scruggs, each of the Dirt Band members that were on the record, all wrote little stories that are in the back.
Well, John, I'm assuming if folks want to order the books, the videos, you also do a Sirius XM radio show as well. They can find out more information about that at your website, correct?
Right. Yeah. JohnMcEuen.net or JohnMcEuen.com. MCEUEN. So yeah. Thank you.
Well, John, absolutely. And go to John's website, check out all of the information about him, about what he's done over the years, about his new album. Again, the new album is called The Newsman, A Man of Record. It's certainly worth the listen. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm going to enjoy it in the future as well. John, I can't thank you enough for coming on the program today.
Okay. I thank you. Like I said to my mom, thanks for having me.